Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining me. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. It's interesting because I got a comment that I wanted to respond to here. Is that one of the driving principles behind holding these seminars, these webinars, is that communication is really one of our primary goals. We have a big program, over 400 kids, 80 coaches. Having language that is shared across every age group and every team is critical. And that's drives to this point. Someone had brought up, they like to call it something else, and they were speaking to separation. And that's all great. If you're speaking to a group of kids that you're skiing with, or a group of students, whatever it may be, you can call it whatever you want. But I don't have that luxury. We don't have that luxury. We have 400 kids and 80 coaches. What is critical is that we all use the same word and we understand what it means. And that's the kind of the driving piece behind having these webinars, so that we can talk about that shared language. If I want to call separation twisty doodle, great, I can do that. And as long as I'm speaking to a small group of people and everyone there knows what that means. But if I'm working with a group of you and I want to call it twisty doodle just so I can explain a concept, so maybe it'll help you understand what it means, that's great. But at the end of the day, when I walk out the door and when we leave that session, we all have to understand that, no, that's called separation, so that when we're speaking to other coaches. And this really ended up being the catalyst for me to have these seminars, because as back around the late 90s through 2007, I was doing a lot of traveling from across the US, working with different coaches and instructors, going to Europe, working with the ski team, working with Canadians, working in South America with coaches that came from Europe and Canada, as well as South America. And that I was always dumbstruck by how different the philosophies were and what people call different things. One coach in US ski and snowboard will call something one thing, and then I'd go to squat, another coach be calling it something completely different, but I realized it was the same thing. So hopefully that helps drive the understanding. Like I said, it's really semantics, and I don't care if you call it the kitchen sink or twisty doodle. This, we establish what our working language is, and then we have to stick with that language. So, and I appreciate you all putting up with me. I'll say that, both on the Zoom calls and the pre-recorded, because it's a bit of a stretch for me speaking into a computer screen. I'm learning, I'm trying to get better, but I go back and listen to it, and all I hear is looking for some questions here regarding what we spoke to.
Mike's got a question.
Okay.
Yeah, actually this goes back to the last session, which I wasn't there for, but I watched a recording of.
Okay.
There was a question toward the end about the U8 developmentals, and whether and how to run them through environments, right? And if I recall correctly, the answer was, sure, if you happen to be going across and I'm coming across some coaches using an environment and you think it might be appropriate, go ahead and run them through. I was wondering if it might make sense to deliberately set up environments that are more suited to them, either on more gradual terrain than the other kids are using, and or maybe with your gates a little less tight and that sort of thing, so that they can kind of ease into it.
Yeah, of course. That is the optimal answer for sure. We would want to set courses for your group, and that's the idea. You should be seeing those, and I think that one of the driving forces behind me getting NASTAR this year, and that comes at a decent expense to the program, but we're doing that to support the development team specifically, that there'll be something up, and the beauty of it is everybody can use it. you know, Eric wants to go race his kids. He can do that. And I know he's getting ready. He's yeah.
I got my message out on time, Sean. Come on, I get a point for that. So
That's right. But yes, Mike, that's what we want to do. We would like to have environment set for you guys, of course, whenever possible. What we found is that the younger group, because they haven't gotten past that ignition stage, typically the U8s, they're still learning how to ride the chairlift. They're still learning the group dynamics of a ski program and how it all works. So it doesn't happen as often, but it is our goal to have that and have courses that are set appropriate for them.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And if anybody has any questions regarding any of the other presentations, I'm happy to take those. Hopefully, I brought up the concept of what a fundamental is, and to clarify that these aren't new. What I'm talking about, those 8 bullet points. My goal is to really make it simple, to really just say, here, skiing's not that complicated, and we as coaches and instructors can make it complicated because we love to dive in and fully understand it, and we can get into the biomechanics and the physics and the turn mechanics and child development, athlete development, and man, we can complicate it. But the reality is, if you can just hit those 8 bullet points, and in fact, if you're a development team coach, you can just hit the first 4. I'm really happy when the U10 shows up and they have some semblance of the first 4, because now they do have that foundation. And as a coach, I can do anything with them at that point. So, okay.
I'd like you to review separation again, because I think it'll bring up some questions in the group.
Okay. So separation is the idea of the upper body going one direction and the lower body going another direction on a vertical axis. Let's just kind of simply look at it that way. It's this kind of thing, right?
Would it make sense to pull up the presentation just to review that?
Oh man, you're
That's
testing
possible.
I'll do that right now while you keep talking.
Okay. See, I got tech support. Thank God. The separation primarily occurs or starts, or where the critical point is between the upper leg, the femur, and the hip socket. That's where it's occurring. So between the pelvis and the femur, we don't have to use big terms. We can say the leg and the hip area. That's where the primary activity occurs. There is some separation that occurs in the spine because the shoulder will come around some more. We don't need to dive into that too much, but that is separation. Our legs are pointing one way, our upper body is pointing another way, and that activity is driven by your ability to turn the legs. That's it. Secondary to that is the ability of the athlete to have core tension and to resist that turning. There's another piece to that, which I don't want to take a deep dive on right now. It's called countering. And it's kind of the opposite, but it occurs in the same joint. And that involves the pelvis moving against the outside leg. And in that situation, it's still rotation in the pelvis, and it's the lower body and upper body going in separate direction, but the ski needs to be engaged and it has to have pressure on it, and the athlete needs to be standing on it, and then they rotate the pelvis against that, moving the inside pelvis forward. So that's separation in a nutshell. Some of the separation comes from the skis as they're being pressured and guided, they turn underneath you. Perfect. And you can see in that situation, I happen to have that photo, so I just threw it up there. You can actually see, because she's in the transition, that the upper leg, the right leg, she's already de-edging that ski and moving to it. This was shot at Mammoth 2 years ago when Michaela was there training. So we had some opportunity to get on the course, and you can see how that upper shoulder, and I talk a lot about upper and lower. So or inside and outside. So in this situation, because she's in the transition, where what's outside and inside is hard to tell. So I often talk about keeping the uphill half forward, and that's the right shoulder and right hip in this situation. And you can see that pretty clearly, and that creates the separation.
Now, can I ask another question?
Yeah.
Why do we separate?
The biggest reason is for balance as you move into the new turn. There's a couple elements and pieces to it. Right now, it's interesting. If we go back a few years, there was a lot of talk about the athletes rotating into the turn. And so if you were to take this video and bring it forward, this clip of her and bring it forward to where the skis are about flatter, her new uphill skis changed edge, it almost appears like they're rotated into the turn. And it's not. What they're doing is holding that separation all the way through the transition. The reason for the separation primarily, and what we're talking about, is that as the athlete changes edge, let's go back to the photo for a second. So as Michaela moves onto her right foot, it is critical that that right hip stays forward. And as she does that, that allows her to have pressure. You hear all the time, keep pressure, or pressure to the new outside ski, and stay in balance. Well, most athletes will get out of balance because they allow their pelvis and shoulders to rotate away. And in this situation, it would be to her right. And a coach's left is where she would turn, and then she would lose contact with the front of the right boot. So let's see if I can do this in the video. If she's here, well, actually, she's going onto her right foot. She's here, and this happens, and you see this happen in our athletes all the time. They as they release their skis, they allow their body to do this. And what that does is, look here. So my pelvis is moving back relative to that foot. So as we get here, that ankle is open and I've lost pressure. My hips have moved across my skis, but I'm not in balance here.
Well, you may be, hold on, you're in balance, but you're not in contact with your boot.
No, this is not balance. I'm not in balance, because you got to remember, it's plane and it's running away from me. This is not balance. If I'm coming into the turn and I do this and I've kept this forward, I'm in balance against that ski. If that ankle opens up, I'm not in balance. There's no way I'm in balance on that foot. So staying here, and you start to see this happen, and this skis change edge. Now this leg begins to shorten, this leg extends, and now they're on top of that. And now at this point, this side of the pelvis can start to move forward. But if it occurs through the transition, they don't start to turn in balance. It needs to occur after the skis change edge, then this can happen. There's some other stuff that kind of is more about the end of the turn as well. But I think that'll cover it for what we need to do with our group.
So would there be any kind of skill tests or evaluation throughout the season so we can gauge the improvement of the athletes through the progression that we put them into? Sure,
that's what the core drills are for. So we have a set of four core drills, 4 phases, and that's actually supposed to be the topic of my next presentation. So we'll be taking a look at those, and they're scored on a scorecard of 1 to 5, and different elements are weighted differently. It is not the skills quest. What's different about the core drills is that very specific elements are identified in our skiing that get scored, so that there's no again confusion about what we're speaking about. The issue with skills quest, there's a lot of ambiguity to what's being scored. And I can stand next to a coach I respect highly, who is a great coach, and he might score an athlete a 3 and I might score an athlete a 6. And that discrepancy becomes because of what they would weight that drill for. They might think, oh, it's about the outside leg. And I might think, well, no, it's about steering the ski. So it creates a problem with the scoring and understanding, especially as we're trying to communicate with the athletes. So it's important, again, on the communication standpoint. I've created this kind of scoring system, and it says, all right, this drill, this is what we're all looking at, and this is what it gets scored. So I'll be rolling that out, and I'll share that with you all this week with the scoring piece to it. Okay. And then we'll go into presentation. All right. What else?
And Sean, so the waterfall approach that you present, I think, last one or the one before, is that always going to be communicated to the coaches where the set is going to be, or is it always going to be at warm up and why not every weekend?
So typically warm up is our training hill. We have that. We get to close and open it whenever we want. We own that hill. So that is always where we'll be doing some of our training, and the pitch on warm up really suits a huge span of our group. Obviously, it's not for everybody, and we often get the great fortune of setting on upper vadal without closing the run. We often get to set on, and then it depends on time of the year. Right in the beginning of the year, we're setting on White Way and Wanderer and Wraparound and things like that. We'll set wherever we can. So the answer, it really is, we'll always be on warm up. We'll often train on Wicked and Why Not and Vadal, but all those have to be approved. And yeah, so when every week I have a training calendar, and I'll share that with you. I share with the head coaches, and they can share it with you. It shows where we're training. It shows what's being trained, and it's time blocks. Each runs have different time blocks built into it. It's on a spreadsheet.
And I guess head coaches and maybe you going to be heading out earlier in the day and setting them up.
Yeah, it's kind of depends on the coach. It may be the head coach. It might be people they choose depending on how they're running their group. A head coach might want to ski with his kids or oversee what's going on and send somebody off the set ahead. So the idea, typically the general plan of a day, is that the athletes do some sort of warm up that is directed warm up. And then during that period, something's being set, and then the athletes show up and start training.
So Sean, this will be a little off topic, but they had the webinar for NISRA. They had Tommy and Trisha, and I'm totally drawing a blank on the other racer. They were talking about like their view, how they got to where they're at, and they brought up the issue of free skiing and discussing the importance of free skiing in their development. How do we see us? I'm just kind of curious as to. I see the smirk. I was just interesting to see. Like, it's always an issue that we discuss and bring up, and they pretty much hammered it continually about how important it was just to go out, rip around, and have fun on the hill too.
You know my philosophy here. I can flat out tell you, Michaela Schiffer never free skied. So
she's pretty good. She's done all right for herself.
She's done okay. And I think, I don't know why we've been trying to sell this concept for 30 years. Mm-hmm. It's been as long as I've been coaching, and I bought into it. And if you look at the science, and you look at the statistics, it doesn't hold water. And they can believe what they want to believe. And sure, there is an element ripping around and having fun, and that should be part of it. My argument is shouldn't be part of your training day. That when you walk onto a soccer field or a lacrosse field, you're there to train. It's not about running around with a stick in your hand, because that's basically what you would be doing. Here's a ball, here's a stick, run around and play with it. But we're not going to practice today because it's about free sticking.
Yeah.
So that's my philosophy. I know it's going against the grain a little bit, but go to Europe and see what they do.
Yeah, no, it was just interesting because I know we talked about it and they had brought it up, and just, you know, it's always a interesting conversation topic.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
In Europe,
statistically,
those kids won't even stand in line, much less, I mean, it's complete mayhem there.
yeah. And you know, the statistically, the US does horribly in skiing. I mean, I did an analysis where I looked at US results as a ratio of number of ski racers, and we were not in the top 10.
Yeah.
So we're a big country with a lot of skiers and a lot of ski racers and a lot of money, and yet we can't produce it. So somebody needs to go. We've been preaching this free skiing for a while and it hasn't worked. And our best skier ever doesn't free ski. She does drills.
Yeah.
That's gates and it's not to say that running gates is. I would say we have to be careful on how much running gates we do. We have to push outside those boundaries, but you know, the sport needs to look like, or the training needs to look like the sport, and that's my answer to it.
Hi there.
Hello.
Can you speak a little bit about, you know, last winter we had the pleasure of Mike Rogan visiting us, and you and he were talking about higher edge angle, moving the foot and the ankle. Can you kind of review that again for me? You know, getting that foot moving more in the boot.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Rogan's coming back again this year, so you could maybe ski with him and he could answer the question better than I, but he's going to be here on the weekend of the 17th. So put it on your calendar.
He can talk pretty good, but let's have you talk about
So
firing higher edge angle for young kids.
yeah. So if you see my video, I posted one last year, the magic inside the boot. It really speaks to this. And it's the idea that you have to do this inside the boot. I don't know that it gives you higher edge angle, but what it does is it starts the kinetic chain, to use a big term, basically that the base of support is established. The tipping of the foot then allows the femur to rotate and the knee to come in, and then the hip can lift on the inside, and it builds up through and it allows us to create edge angle, and it allows you to move off. Once that edge is established in the ankle, it allows you to effectively move to the inside on that. So I don't know that the ankle is really essential to creating high edge angle. And there's other really edge angles got more to do with leg length change and the pelvis moving to the inside, which kind of moves us into the phase 2 and 3 of our core drills and more along into in our fundamentals 6, 7, and 8. So
Okay, that's exactly what I wanted you to say.
okay. I'm glad I said what you wanted me to.
Yeah, no, I wanted you to differentiate from, it's not just the foot.
Oh no, yeah, right. Then the foot's a small piece that it establishes the chain for us to move through. Yeah, for sure. It's critical, and it's what happens through the transition, but it's not the big angles that is created by the foot.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you bet.
This is not technical, John. So will there be any video analysis for, say, like U12, U14? I don't know if we're going to do anything with U10, U8, but will there be any video analysis session for them somewhere in the season, or
Yes,
plan to do?
Yes, you should expect that. As a matter of fact, give me a moment here. For clarification, U10 and under, I don't find that video analysis very powerful. I think it happens once in a while, and it needs to be limited and very concise. But once you hit U12 and up, we need to be using video more and more. Each age group should become more extensive. It is a double-edged sword. Give me a second to sign into this. Some video is good. Too much is not good. We can get caught watching ourselves too much. Our ego starts to get involved. And so we have to manage that in terms of like, here's a clip. What are you seeing? Connect that to the coach. I did purchase a new coaching platform that we're going to be using. It's called OnForm. This is actually a clip. We're going to focus on the new outside leg, which is his right leg. And you're going to notice that it's going to tip this way. And it's also going to rotate that way. All right. So that's a video platform called OnForm. Each head coach has the opportunity to connect to that. It's also a cloud storage piece to it as well. I know Motion Caroline have already connected with me on that. And so they have the capacity to film, do a video review. You can draw on the screen. It's really great. And then you can share it directly with the athlete, with the parent. It's really powerful, has full on communication. You can communicate through that platform just like you can in Team Snap. So it has the video basis behind it. And you can draw, you can do skeletal analysis. You can do side-by-side views. So you can take run 1, run 2, or compare the fastest skier to one of our skiers and look and see what the difference is. So very powerful tool, and hopefully we'll be using it this year. It comes at an expense, right? One of the things that we're doing different this year, or we're trying to do different, is we're trying to hire people to help us. We're trying to reach out to the parents saying, hey, we need some help. Do you know how to hold a video camera? Do you understand technology? So we're trying to add to our staff, not necessarily coaches, but someone who can shoot the video, someone who can upload the video, someone who can help manage all that format. And then the coach can do the coaching and the editing there. So hopefully it all works out. We're making steps in the right direction, but it might take some time to get there.
Thank you, Sean.
You're welcome. And I saw Susie had her hand up. You still have a question, Susie?
Yeah, I was just wondering what the grab 8 and go method was. The one you were talking about in the slideshow, like not the waterfall, but the other one.
Yeah, so that's a very typical approach to coaching that's been done over history, and it still works and has great value at times. The idea is that as a coach, you show up, you stand at a sign, your 8 kids come out to you, you grab your whatever it is, I just call it 8 and go, it can be 6 and go and 10 and go. It's taking your kids and you go skiing with them, and you ski around the mountain. You might do some drills along the way, and there's a lot of free skiing. There's some directed skiing. There's some drills, but it's not in courses. It's not in necessarily in environments and dedicated to those environments. You might ski over to where there's a set and take a couple runs, but basically you're just skiing with that group. And you're staying with that group. Coach, 8 kids, they ski around and do different things. The waterfall is coach is parked, athletes cycle through. And a coach might grab an athlete and then do a lap with that 1 or 2 athletes. That's a different approach where there's a greater amount of there's more put on the athlete in terms of they're responsible for getting around, they're responsible for their work, and the coach is managing the space while they show up. And very often you might have coaches in various spots along the waterfall, or if it's a long race course, like you would with the U16 athlete, you might have one at the bottom, one at the middle, and one at the bottom. In our waterfall approach, you might have one coach at every waterfall or every other waterfall. You might have somebody videoing on one. So you have your staff spread out on the hill and your athletes are spinning on their own. Does that explain the difference?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Leslie had one comment in the chat that she feels the group gets more out of watching the coach than themselves.
Probably depends.
At that age, we were talking about U10.
Oh,
At
yeah.
an older group, I kind of like the videos because not all coaches can execute, including myself as I get older. But U8, U10 have a tendency to imitate because of their age. And I feel that, you know, watching a coach or watching others, they get more out of it. They'll try to emulate what's happening in front of them.
Yeah, potentially to some extent. I've never felt I was good enough. So I always used to use my phone and I would carry video clips and I'd show the kids, they're like, that's how you need to ski. And right when we got off the lift, and then I'd plant their image in a way. So show them here, that's Michaela. You see that? Ski like that. Don't ski like me. So yeah, they will definitely emulate. I used to send videos to my athletes midweek so they could watch them midweek as well to kind of implant their visualization is a very powerful tool. It's, you know, there's a ton of science behind it. So creating, I think we have the technology now. There's a lot more of that out there to take advantage of that. And when I first started coaching, trying to find ski video was a nightmare, but now it's definitely readily available. And if you've got children in the program, make sure they're watching ski racing video of the good racers. It'll be good. Watch the video we post. Imaging is important. All right. Anything else? Any more stuff in the chat that I can answer, speak to? All right. Thank you all for joining me. Have a great day.
Thanks, Sean. Have a
Thank
good one.
you.
Guys,
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks, John.
Bye.
have a good weekend.